Welcome to this lesson on types of selection, part of our evolution series. Natural selection is one of the fundamental mechanisms of evolution, but it doesn't always work in the same way. In this video, we'll explore three distinct patterns of natural selection: directional, stabilizing, and disruptive selection. Each pattern affects populations differently depending on environmental pressures and the traits being selected. Understanding these patterns will help you grasp how populations change over time and adapt to their environments. Before diving into the types of selection, let's quickly review what natural selection means. Natural selection is the process where organisms with favorable traits survive and reproduce more successfully than others. These favorable traits are then passed on to the next generation, becoming more common in the population over time. The key insight here is that different environmental pressures lead to different patterns of selection. The same mechanism of natural selection can produce very different outcomes depending on which traits are favored in a given environment. There are three main types of selection that biologists recognize. First is directional selection, which favors one extreme phenotype over others. Second is stabilizing selection, which favors intermediate phenotypes and works against extremes. And third is disruptive selection, which favors both extreme phenotypes while selecting against the intermediate forms. Each type produces a distinct effect on the distribution of traits in a population. Let's examine each one in detail to understand how they work and when they occur in nature. Directional selection occurs when one extreme phenotype is favored over the average and the other extreme. Imagine a bell curve representing trait distribution in a population. In directional selection, one end of that curve is consistently more successful at surviving and reproducing. This causes two important effects. First, it shifts the population mean in one direction. The average value of the trait moves toward the favored extreme. Second, it reduces variation over time as individuals with traits at the unfavored end are gradually eliminated from the population. The classic example of directional selection is giraffe neck length. During periods of drought, food becomes scarce, and giraffes must compete for limited resources. Giraffes with longer necks could reach higher leaves on trees that shorter-necked giraffes couldn't access. This gave them a survival advantage. They were more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genes for longer necks to their offspring. Over many generations, the result was clear. The population shifted toward having longer necks. This is directional selection in action, pushing the population in one specific direction. Stabilizing selection works very differently from directional selection. Instead of favoring one extreme, stabilizing selection favors intermediate phenotypes and eliminates extreme variations on both ends. Picture that bell curve again. In stabilizing selection, individuals in the middle of the curve are most successful, while those at either extreme face disadvantages. This type of selection has two key effects. It maintains the population mean, keeping the average trait value stable over time. And it reduces variation, making the population more uniform by eliminating outliers on both sides. A perfect example of stabilizing selection is human birth weight. Medical data shows that babies with very low birth weights face health complications and higher mortality rates. But babies with very high birth weights also face problems, including difficult deliveries and health risks. Babies with average birth weights, however, have the best survival rates. They face fewer complications and are more likely to survive to adulthood and reproduce. The result is that selection maintains the average birth weight in human populations. Extremes in either direction are selected against, keeping the trait stable. Disruptive selection is the rarest and most interesting type. It favors both extreme phenotypes while eliminating intermediate forms. This is the opposite of stabilizing selection. In disruptive selection, individuals at both ends of the trait distribution are more successful than those in the middle. This creates two important effects. First, it produces a bimodal distribution, meaning the population splits into two peaks instead of one. Second, it increases variation in the population and can even lead to speciation, the formation of new species. This occurs when different extremes adapt to different niches in the environment, eventually becoming so different they can no longer interbreed.
If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit CodeLucky.com for more such useful content.